I'm speaking with whom, please?
Radwan Masmoudi.
And you're with which organization?
I'm with the Center for the Study of Islam and Democracy.
What is it that that group is trying to do?
The center was established about 8 years ago in 1999 to promote democracy in the Arab and Muslim world and promote a better vision and interpretation of Islam for the 21st century.
Do you do any work or do you consider the experience of Islam in America?
Yes, we do. One of our main objectives is to educate Americans about what is Islam. I mean, especially after 9/11, there is a lot of misunderstanding about what Islam is, what Islam teaches. There is a lot of media coverage of extremists, Muslim extremists and radicals who are, using Islam to justify violence and killings and all that. So we have a big job ahead of us, which is to educate Americans that this is not the true Islam.
Many people in America are concerned about Shari'a law and democracy as we experience it in America. Can you speak to that a little, please?
Sure. Shari'a in Arabic just means rule of law. I mean, that's the direct interpretation of the word is rule of law. And basically it means that there is a law and the law is divinely guided by the Quran. But we find that 90 to 95% of what is called Shari'a is actually not from the Quran. It's actually interpretations of the scholars throughout the history, throughout centuries of Islam. And we have accumulated all those interpretations, and we feel that there is a need for a new interpretation of Sharia. There is a need to reinterpret the Quran and the Islamic teachings in light of the 21st century. What does it mean to be a Muslim today in the 21st century? And how can we reorganize our communities and our societies in order to live in the 21st century? There are so many advances, both in terms of science and politics and economics and things like that, that we as Muslims need to take advantage of and need to adapt to this new situation. So the real challenge that Muslims face in America and all over the world today is how to be Muslim and modern at the same time.
Give us an example of something that you think needs to be reinterpreted or re-examined in light of the experience today in America.
Well, there are several examples. One issue that is always comes up is the issue of polygamy, for example. We know that Islam did not invent polygamy. Polygamy existed in previous civilizations throughout history. Islam, in fact, was the first religion that limited the number of wives that man could have, because before Islam, it was unlimited. People could have 10 or 20 wives, and Islam said, no, you can only have 4 as a maximum. Unfortunately, some Muslims think or thought in history that this is an Islamic thing to do, that you have to have 4 wives. Well, in fact, if you read the Quran, it doesn't say that. It says that that is the maximum, but it is preferred to have only 1 wife. And these are things that I think that if you study the Quran, if you study the Islamic history, you see that Islam was forced or had to accept that, as in those times, in those societies, it was a normal thing to do. It was impossible at the time of the Prophet 14 centuries ago to say a man can only marry 1 woman. But I think this is something that can change, for example, in the 21st century, and without contradicting anything in Islam or in the Quran, that we can say we don't need polygamy anymore, and polygamy was useful at a certain period of our history or needed at a certain time of human civilization, but is no longer needed and is no longer adaptable or acceptable.
There are other concerns that people have concerning women and how they're viewed in some Islamic societies, and what the Sharia law, how it is enforced regarding the treatment of women. Can you speak to that in terms of the American experience?
Sure. Again, we find that there are a lot of interpretations of Quran about how to treat women that were actually not in the Quran. They were actually from the society in which Prophet Muhammad and the early scholars of Islam lived 14 centuries ago. And today, by the standards of the 21st century, those limits are actually discriminatory against women. And if you read the Quran, you see that the essence of the Quran, the essence of Islam, is that men and women are equal. This is the essence of it. But some of the practices, and some of them are called part of the Shari'a, but actually, as I said, they are interpretations by different scholars, like the Wahhabi school of thought. The Wahhabi school of thought actually started about 2 centuries ago, 250 years ago in Saudi Arabia, and it is very restrictive on women's rights, but that it has nothing to do with the Quran. It's just that in that society 250 years ago, women's rights were not a priority, and now I think they should be, and that's part of the development that Muslim civilization, Muslim culture, and Muslim Sharia, the laws, have to be adapted and have to be changed in order to give equal rights to women, which I think is the essence of Islam.
We are told that in Iran there are actual Sharia courts and Sharia enforcement authorities like police. Is that something that could happen here in America?
No, I don't think there is anybody who can reasonably call for Sharia to be implemented in America, because Muslims in America are a tiny minority. First of all, they don't represent more than maybe 1 or 2% of the population, and secondly, Muslims in America appreciate that there is a democracy here and there is rule of law, and the law is there to protect everybody, to protect all religious minorities, to protect everybody. So I don't think the Sharia laws are applicable in America. And even in Iran or Saudi Arabia, I think it is actually a misinterpretation of Sharia that we are seeing today in Iran or in Saudi Arabia. I would not go as far as calling it true Sharia. It's people using Islam and people using Sharia to justify their political end and political will to dominate the society in the name of religion.
It sounds as if you feel comfortable in interpreting Islam according to your experience here in America, and saying that the experience of Islam in other countries and other times may be different. So are you saying that these people in other places are wrong about Islam, or can both sides be right?
Well, I think we have to understand that part of the interpretation of Islam, that there is more than one Islam. There are different kinds of Islam. Just like Christianity and Judaism and all other religions, there are different interpretations of the religion depending on the conditions and the society in which it is living. So, for example, Islam, if it's interpreted in Saudi Arabia, would be very different from Islam interpreted and lived in Turkey, for example, which is another Muslim majority country, but much more developed, much more secular, much more oriented toward Europe. So I think that the interpretation of a religion takes into consideration the local customs, the local culture, the local norms of the society in which it lives. And that's why throughout history you see different kinds of Islam developed, from Indonesia, for example, to Nigeria, to Morocco, to Turkey. There is always this flexibility and freedom to reinterpret and reevaluate the priorities of Islam according to the norms of the country. It would be very wrong to try to import particular interpretations from one country to another, because they are different. The conditions of the country and the society are very different.